You've got John McMullen, Jody McDonald, and our buddy from Eagles Blitz. That's IGGLES Blitz.com is a very good Eagles website where he posts about the Eagles all week long, pre and post the game and the like. Tommy Lawlor jumps in with us here on Birds 365. ITL, this is where I want to go with you first. Back it up 52 weeks. Last year at this time, the Philadelphia Eagles were 5-0. This year they are 5-0 and are favored pretty heavily to go to 6-0 against the Jets' son's Aaron Rodgers this week. How do you compare this year's team to last year's team as to this moment in time when both teams were undefeated early into the season?
Well, last year nobody expected 5-0. We thought that was going to be a good team, but I don't think we thought they were going to go 14-3 and necessarily to the Super Bowl, and because they were coming off a 9-8 season. And before that, obviously, they had the disaster of 2020. This year, they're 5-0. And so last year, while the Eagles, we all thought they were going to be good as they had built that roster. And then the acquiring Chauncey Gardner-Johnson right there in early September, all of a sudden people started saying that could be a Super Bowl team. But I still don't think people within the NFL were shooting for the Eagles. This year, the Eagles are a marked team, right? Everybody wants to beat the Eagles. And we saw that the Patriots spent all off season coming up with a game plan to slow down Jalen Hurts. That wasn't happening last year, and then people, we saw Minnesota using creative defenses to slow down Jalen Hurts again. That wasn't happening last year. So last year's team was able to win games and there was no pressure. This year, there's a lot of pressure. Teams are throwing everything they have at the Eagles. And the fact that they've been able to find different ways to win without having their A game consistently shows you that the team has grown. Because last year, when they didn't have their A game against Washington, they lost in the regular season. And that was to Taylor Heineke. This team has been able to figure out the answer for whatever's come their way so far.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference, Tommy, is what you just said. Last year, people came in and said, all right, Jalen Hurts has got to beat us throwing the football. This year, it's the exact opposite. They want to limit the off-schedule stuff. They want to limit the quarterback run game, and they want somebody else to beat them. And the Eagles been able to find a way. It's pretty impressive. That's what I'm most impressed about. They, Minnesota, you mentioned that they're playing the light boxes, and they're like, all right, we're just going to run it down your throat. And they can throw the ball. They can do that. They can beat you in so many ways. It's pretty impressive offensively, except asterisk, the red zone. What's going on in the red zone? 20, I believe, 7th in the league. They're top 10 in everything, Tommy, except red zone offense. They go from 20 to 20. They got 400 plus yards every week, and then they bog down. But they have Jake Elliott. Overall, though, you would think with Miami coming up, Buffalo, San Francisco, etc., they're going to have to score touchdowns at some point.
So just where we talked about how last year, the Eagles did certain things, the team studied them in the offseason, they built plans. The Eagles have overcome that. It feels like people really studied what the Eagles did in the red zone last year and have come up with ways to deal with that. They're not caught by surprise. Think how often Jalen Hurts was just such a dynamic force in the red zone last year, running untouched for touchdowns.
Yeah.
This year, people are focusing on him, and that's taken that element away. Obviously, they haven't thrown the ball a lot to Dallas Goedert this year until last week, period. Dallas Goedert should be a valuable red zone weapon. Tight end, that's where tight ends were made to thrive. And so I think part of it's on the execution by the players. You heard Jason Kelsey talk the other day about how frustrated he is with the lack of execution and the red zone struggles. I think part of it's on Brian Johnson and trying to get a feel for what works. And unfortunately for Brian, he's stepping in where, again, defenses have studied what happened last year, and he's got to overcome what defenses are throwing at him, what they've taken away. So it'll take a little bit of time. And it also feels like a lot of red zone possessions are starting at the 10 or 9 yard line, and you got to go to full way. If the Eagles were starting first and goal at the 3 and getting stuff, that'd feel a little worse. But when you're starting at the 9 or 10, you got to go the full distance. It does make it harder. And so, yeah, it's part of it's on the players and part of it's on the coaches.
All right, Tommy, we could get really specific and get down to the nitty and the gritty and the details. I just want a wide sweeping evaluation from you. If we were to go either pass fail, thumbs up or thumbs down for the Eagles' two new coordinators, I would say you got to go thumbs up on both at this stage. They're a coordinator of a 5-0 team. How can you go thumbs down? It just would not be fair as far as I'm concerned. But of the two, defense, offense, which coordinator has impressed you more taking over for a pretty damn successful predecessor?
Well, I'll say Sean Desai simply because he's had a bigger challenge with replacing so many parts on the defense. Right now, the offense is the better unit, right? So give Brian Johnson credit for that. But he also was there last year. He inherited a lot of pieces that were there last year. We're talking about replacing the right guard and the number 4 wide receiver. So, and then I guess a running back. So the rest of it was just like what was there last year. Sean Desai has new linebackers, new safeties. He's got some new faces on the defensive line, and he's had to try to figure some things out. He's also had to deal with injuries. It feels like the secondary, they're taking turns getting hurt for a week. And I know that's the one place you really want continuity. You can plug and play the guys on the defensive line because you're going to get the quarterback, you're attacking a run in a certain gap. On the secondary, you've got to see the same thing that the guy beside you sees so that you don't jump a route and that he knows which receiver is going to be covered. And so the fact that they've had so many guys coming in and out and they've managed to play so well last week against the Rams is impressive. You saw earlier in the year when the secondary, again, still new, still learning. There were times, especially when Washington threw some of the bunch sets at them, that the Eagles just looked confused. And then part of that was I thought Terrell Edmonds just really struggled in that game. Justin Evans plays on Sunday in place of him, and the Eagles just look crisper. There would be bunch sets where you would see the 3 Rams run their route, and you would see James Bradbury jump on his guy. You'd see Reed Blankenship jump on his guy, and you'd see the slot corner jump on his guy, and they do it quickly and fluidly. And getting Bradbury back to the outside, I think, was a big help. He's more comfortable there. And then Blankenship is healthy, and he's playing well. And in the slot corner, it's a little bit of a work in progress. But I think we saw good things from Bradley Roby. I thought Eli Ricks looked pretty good. And I thought even Mario Goodrich was better as the game went on. Early on, he was really struggling, but he got a little bit more comfortable as the game went on.
Yeah, I wonder about the inside of the Eagles, say straight up the middle. I still am concerned about that, Tommy. As you mentioned, you think about what's going on in the slot since Avonte Maddox went down against Minnesota. Mario Goodrich finishes that game. Then the next week in Tampa Bay, they piecemeal it between Bradbury and Sidney Brown. Then Sidney Brown gets hurt. Next week against Washington, it's pretty much Bradbury who's an outside corner, as you mentioned. Then we're like, we got to get Bradbury back to the outside. And it's back to Goodrich and Eli Ricks. And Cooper Kupp is really, really beaten both pretty badly. And Slay sort of was the one who said, look, we gotta switch this up. They even used Slay in there for a couple snaps, and then it was Roby. That's what's going on in the slot. So in one hand, I'm like, that's pretty impressive to persevere through that and get to 5-0, especially against guys like Cooper Kupp. And going back to where it started with Jefferson, that's pretty impressive. On the other hand, I say to myself, you know what? Matthew Stafford's getting the football out in 2.2 seconds. Kirk Cousins getting it out in 2.4. He usually holds on to the football. This defensive front is masking a lot of deficiencies, Tommy, on the back end in the middle of that defense. You think that's fair or unfair?
I think it's fair. Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons that the defensive line isn't putting up gaudy sack numbers, right? Quarterbacks are getting the ball out very quickly. And so the Eagles defensive backs only have to cover for a certain amount of time. That said, when we have seen teams throw down the field, Reed Blankenship has tended to be the deep safety on a lot of those plays, and he's been in position to break up a pass. He almost picked off a pass against Washington. So they've done well when teams have gone really deep. When teams have just tried to throw more of the intermediate and the like a deep dig route and things of that nature, that's where they need 7-step drops and they need good protection. We haven't seen a lot of that. When they've thrown real vertical balls, the Eagles have been able to handle that. But against a team that we haven't seen anybody really throw the ball 15 to 20 yards down the field consistently against them. So that will be a test. The Rams tried some of that with shots to Cooper Kupp on 20 and 30-yard routes.
Yeah, and he was open, but that's my point, Tommy.
But that's the design of the defense is you tell your defensive back to play good leverage and stay inside him and force the ball to be thrown over the shoulder to the perfect spot. And if you watch, I was just rewatching the game last night.
Yeah,
Josh Sweat is right in Stafford's face, so Stafford throws the ball out of bounds. You can't cover everybody. This is not the 85 Bears, and even the 85 Bears, they went up against one team that had an elite passing attack, and the Dolphins won 38-24. When an offense is good at throwing the football, you're not going to shut them down unless you've got a freak defense that covers at a high level. And there's just not a lot of those out there. And certainly the Eagles are not that kind of defense.
Yeah.
Tommy, I need to ask you about the guy who has been the star and the stud. Really difficult to believe. Well, maybe not.
John McMullen?
Of the kind of season that they had last year, all of a sudden a rookie comes in and he's the star of the defensive line that got 70 sacks last year. Yeah, that's exactly what it has been so far, what Jalen Carter's done in the middle. Another dominant performance again last week, even though the Rams did as best they could to limit him by getting the ball the hell out of Stafford's hand as quickly as they did. He played 71% of the snaps this past week. Part of that out of necessity because Fletcher was out of the lineup. Marlon Tuipulotu was out of the lineup. But again, looked great on almost every single snap he played. You going to play him less snaps this week because Fletcher's back? Or do you just keep building up his amount? Aaron Donald's on the field, and I'm not calling him Aaron Donald. I'm not getting carried away, but the best defensive tackles in the league do play basically every snap. That they're not part of a rotational base. All right, they get one every 20 plays. It's just give them a quick breath, boom, get them back in there. Are we talking about getting into that territory for Jalen Carter very soon?
I would still rotate him. And the simple fact is when he was at Georgia, he wasn't playing a ton of snaps at Georgia. I mean, they had such huge leads that he probably wasn't playing much in the fourth quarter of games. So this is not a guy who's used to playing 55 to 60 snaps a game. And again, the Eagles, everything they do this year has to be predicated on some level of January and February. And Jalen Carter dominating in October is nice. We need Jalen Carter in January and February. So let's treat him, listen, baseball analogy, it's a starting pitcher. Why have him pitch 8 innings now? Let's have him pitch 6, and hopefully by the time he gets to October, that arm will still be fresh for October. And so, let's not wear him out during a regular season, which is important, but this team has bigger aspirations, and you need a fresh, healthy Jalen Carter for a Super Bowl run. And as we know, rookies, sometimes they're not used to playing 17 games. In college, most they played is 15. And again, with a couple of those coming against cupcakes, and then with other blowouts, they're just not used to playing that many snaps. So let's not wear him out.
Yeah, I think that's the strength of the Eagles. Jody's right. I mean, Donald's played, I'm just looking it up, 271 snaps, Carter 164. Trying to look at other guys. Daron Payne, 280. Derek Brown, 272. When you get to those big numbers, Jonathan Allen, St. Washington, 284. Harrison Phillips, 266. They don't have any depth. They don't have depth. That's why those guys are out there. The Eagles have this extraordinary depth. I think that's the whole key to their defense. I don't want to understate it because, if those guys are gassed in a close game in the fourth quarter, but they got to be out there. That was like Fletcher early in his career where we kept asking him, are you going to keep playing Fletcher these many reps? Well, they'd be in close games, and I said, we can't take him off the field.
Right.
And I think the strength of the Eagles right now on defense, unquestionably, is that front. And it's not only the talent, the top end talent is phenomenal, but the reserves are good and they're capable. And if you got it, use it. And the Eagles, I think, are going about it the right way. Are they ever going to be in a close game where they're in a sense of urgency? Well, they already have been in Washington.
Washington was close to go to overtime.
And
Can't
they
get any
were
closer than that, John.
and they were on the field. They were on the field. And if that happens again, they'll be on the field. But in games where they have a little bit of breathing room, I think it's really smart to rotate those guys and limit their reps. We've seen they've extended Brandon Graham's career, and they're doing the same with Fletcher now. Fletcher's playing great before he got hurt. Yeah, we were talking about the back end. I think they have to do it that way because they have to dominate up front, where I think you start to see some of the weaknesses in the middle of the field. That would be my take on it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
If you're not the ultimate nightmare for me, I don't know if you guys remember this, back in 2005, the Eagles played Seattle on a Monday night game. And there was a play where Matt Hasselbeck dropped back, and I swear he held the ball for 12 seconds.
Was that the 40 to whatever game?
It was a bad blowout, yeah. And there was a game where he just had nobody near him, and he just stood in the pocket.
Yeah.
Stood, counted, waited. Finally, somebody came up and he hit him for a touchdown. And it literally was embarrassing because, the Eagles, the one thing, even when they're a cruddy team, they can get to the quarterback. They affect the quarterback. This team has played defense, and watching that team not be able to get within 10 feet of Matt Hasselbeck, that was a nightmare. So, yeah, you've got to be able to get pressure, and if this defense can't get pressure, then the back seven is definitely going to be vulnerable. But luckily, they've built such an array of rushers that they have flexibility. They can speed rush, they can power rush. They have guys coming to the inside. They can use Josh Sweat on stunts. Brandon Graham was lining up a defensive tackle against the Rams on some plays.
Yeah,
they were being, and that's one thing. Talking about Desai, he's been really creative with his personnel and moving them around. We've seen Fletcher Cox line up at defensive end, and so he's let them put them in different spots, and it just gives the blocker. If you go from blocking Hassan Reddick at 240 pounds to Cox at 310 pounds, that's two different players, right? So let's throw different things at these blockers and see if you can catch them off guard and get to the quarterback. So Sean Desai's been creative, and this front line has been fantastic.
All right, let's add to Jonathan Desai's creativity and tinkering with the defense that Jonathan Gannon ran last year, though similar, not exactly the same. If I set the over-under sacks for Nicholas Morrow this week at 1.5, seeing as he's got a 3-sack game under his belt this year, I think that's a fair number. If you're going under, tell me why Nicholas Morrow won't get a sack, 2 sacks this week against the Jets.
I'm going way under before Tommy jumps in. But go ahead.
I'm going to go under because I think the game's going to get so out of hand so fast that he probably won't even play the last 3 quarters. They'll put the backups in. So that's what I guess.
They don't have backups. They got 3 linebackers at it. Quality time for Christian Ellis. Is that what we're talking about?
No. So joking aside, I think that you're not going to need to blitz Zach Wilson. That Jets offensive line is really banged up. They just lost their right tackle. They've got a rookie starting at right guard who played center in college. The left tackles had all kinds of issues. So I think that the front 4 is going to get pressure on their own. So I don't expect Nick Morrow to have to blitz in this game. So
can't get any sacks if you don't blitz.
Listen,
got a good point there, Tommy.
Well, they'll let him green dog, where if the running back stays in and blocks, then he can attack up the field. And his sacks have come when Reddick or Carter or somebody flushed the quarterback and he was there to clean it up.
Yeah, exactly. This is not Lawrence Taylor coming around the edge, people.
No, he's so much better than Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, he wasn't, those were not conventional. There were 2, I believe, delayed blitzes, and Yeah, I mean, he's just cleaning up stuff at the front, and that's why.
But he's there. He's making
Yeah,
the
oh,
play.
he's playing great. He
Yeah.
deserves credit. He's playing great. He's making plays, and that brings me to the question, Tommy. I think we all say, well, this can't continue. We've seen enough of Nick Morrow to say he's not Fred Warner. But he's last week was yesterday, Pro Football Focus kind of, they grade and they tweak and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he's number 2 now. He's number 2 in the NFL. He's not Fred Warner though. And I think, everybody's waiting for the shoe to drop. I think the Eagles, to be honest, are waiting for the shoe to drop because they want to get Nakobe back in the lineup. But the shoe hasn't dropped. And if Nakobe's ready and he's back at practice, what does Tommy Lawlor do? Do you just go back to Nakobe Dean? Do you move out Zach Cunningham and play them both? What do you do?
Are we allowed to trade for Fred Warner? Is that one of the options? Yeah, so one of the things I'm curious about, so Nakobe last year played more of the weak side linebacker role, obviously with TJ Edwards as middle linebacker. Well, Morrow right now has been the guy with the green dot. He's been the middle linebacker. I wonder if you could put Nakobe Dean back into the weak side spot and have him play in place of Zach Cunningham. And then you'd have Dean and Morrow on the field together, who are the more athletic
well, you could certainly do that. If they do that, I think, though, Nakobe's got the green dot. They don't want to move Nakobe off the green dot. They think he's the leader of their defense. They think he's really smart.
And that's fine.
And by the way, Nick Morrow has extensive experience at both as well. So he's got extensive experience.
He's more comfortable as a weak side linebacker.
Yeah.
He talked about that last year in Chicago. They had him play in weak side, or they had him play in middle linebacker when they traded Roquan Smith. They moved him they had him starting at the weak side, and they moved him into the middle.
Yep.
He was more comfortable in the weak side where he's played in space a little bit. So I would consider trying to get those two. Like Zach Cunningham has been a good run defender. He tackles, he can shed blocks, he's big and strong and physical, but he struggles in coverage, right? And Dean and Morrow are going to be your best cover linebackers. They both tackle well, and they're both solid athletes.
Well, Tommy, let me interject. This week, you got the Jets. You got to be worried about the run game, not the pass game.
And that's why I wondered if they would hold Nakobe another week and just leave these guys in, because you want Zach Cunningham on the field for this game, I think, because he is a run defender. Mm-hmm. And with Morrow, if you funnel plays to the inside, he's a solid tackler. So I don't know if you want to bring Nakobe in and put the pressure of him having to deal with Hall, who's an explosive runner. And if you're just a half a second late, he can be out down the field for a 50-yard gain. So I didn't know if they want to put Nakobe on the field for that as your first game. But then again, I think, what is it, Miami the week after? So maybe you want to go ahead and get him because that game's going to be even worse. So maybe you do go ahead and put Nakobe in this game. And maybe you play him in Cunningham. I don't know. They've got options. And listen, that's something we didn't think we'd say back in August, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we didn't think we thought the option would be, okay, so there's Dean and who else has a pulse?
If Nakobe's up this week, options. And we don't know that Nakobe's going to be up yet this week, but if he is, I don't see him playing Morrow and Nakobe together for one very big reason, big being the operative word there. Neither one of them is. As John pointed out, that right now the number one weapon the Jets have is Breece Hall running the football. So if you're going to put your best run defensive linebacker unit out there, I think you have to include Cunningham. But I just do want to note that for those who doubted Nakobe Dean, and Nakobe played one game and he got 7 tackles. He played well before he went down. So the jury is still out on him, but there are people that have been questioning Nakobe since he was drafted because of his size. He's too small to play linebacker in the national phase of safety. Morrow is smaller. Nakobe is bigger than Morrow, and we're seeing him. Where does Morrow rank with the PFF linebackers in the league, John, right now?
Number 2.
Number 2. Oh, so he's the second-ranked linebacker in the league. At what size? If he's 215, it's got to be because he's got rocks in his pockets these days, right?
They list him again. They list him at 225.
Yeah, stop it.
Now, honestly, Honestly, if you're asking me who's slightly bigger, slightly, they're both undersized. I would say Nick is slightly bigger. He's slightly taller. Um, Now they list N'Kobe at 231, which is
That's what
absurd.
ridiculous.
I would say now you're right. Nick Morrow played safety in college. He was a safety in college, and he made the shift. He played at that football factory, Greenville University. Um, but he was a safety in college, and he made the transition. I would say he's slightly bigger. N'Kobe is small, but they're both small linebackers.
Right.
Um,
And I think both of them are outstanding linebacker. Got a chance to play linebacker. I just wouldn't put them out there together. Now you're tempting fate. Now you're saying, yeah, we're just going to go completely on these guys' skill sets and throw size and
yeah.
height
Zach
to the
Cunningham's a
wind.
linebacker. Zach looks like a
Oh, no
linebacker.
Right.
question.
He looks
Yeah.
like a
No question.
linebacker.
Yeah. And that's part of it. But the game has changed. It's more about spacing now, and that's why you have these lighter bodies playing linebacker all over the league, not just here in Philadelphia.
And let's be clear, you couldn't do this without Jordan Davis in front of him.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So the
yes,
fact you got
exactly.
that 320-pound man up there who's able to either eat blocks or control gaps or just clog that middle, that keeps blockers from getting to them consistently. And so it allows them to read and get to the football. So, if they had 295-pound defensive tackles, and you'd probably need 240-pound linebackers,
Yeah.
But with
Yeah.
Davis there, and then Cox and Carter and the other big guys they had that really clog up the middle, that allows them to play smaller linebackers and have more speed on the field. So it really, this
Jordan
is going to be an
Davis,
interesting.
man, I'm going to take a victory lap on that because I was talking to Jody back when they drafted him. I said it's not going to show up on the stat sheet. It might be too esoteric, but you can't move this guy, and he just takes up two blockers all the time. And you think about the safety with Nicholas Morrow as well. You talk about all the sacks. And their run defense is so much improved. That's directly tied to the improvement of Jordan Davis from year 1 to year 2. You just can't move that guy. And when you got a guy you can't move, Vita Bea in Tampa, they've had that great run defense right up until they played the Eagles. But when you got that guy you can't move and you got to try to dislodge, it makes it really difficult to run the football. So I go back to the front. I keep going back to the front. It's an amazing group. It really is.
Yeah.
It was, but who was it? Bucky Brooks, right, Jody?
Number one group of any unit, any team, National Football League.
Yeah.
Eagles defensive line over anybody's defensive line, offensive line, quarterbacks, wide receivers, running. Any group, Eagles defensive line number one in the National Football League.
And I agree with him. It is so deep and so dominant. I think that I go back. I have a lot of concerns with the up the middle defense in the scene. But you mentioned Miami. I asked Jody, so I'll ask you, Tommy. The Jets, let's be honest. It's not Aaron Rodgers. It's not it's Zach Wilson. You're not gonna be fearful in the passing game this week. Even though I love Garrett Wilson, I think he'd be a star if he had a quarterback. Is this the week Justin Evans showed up on the injury report out of nowhere? He played the entire game in Los Angeles. He was out of practice with a knee injury, wasn't the neck, so it's a new injury. We know his injury history in general, so he's back on the injury list. Is this the week can get Sidney Brown in at safety and say, you don't have to worry about being gashed. You can sort of learn on the job. I don't think you could do that against Miami, but maybe you get him his feet wet. Is this the week?
I hope so, because I was really discouraged when I saw Terrell Edmonds playing Washington in that game. I just thought he really struggled and was slow, didn't cover well, didn't tackle well. And the one big hit he got is when he hit the quarterback out of bounds. So what if Justin Evans, if he can't play, and we're still early, not early, I guess we still have time we'll see how that goes. But if Evans can't play, I'd rather have Brown. I'd rather live with a rookie mistake than to have a veteran who's just playing bad football. And maybe I'm being overly harsh on one game, but a veteran just shouldn't play like that. That really bugged me. So yeah, I'd rather have the rookie out there. And we know one thing: he's going to bring some juice to the defense. He's going to fly around. He's going to be physical. He's going to hit. And he showed against Tampa he can make some plays. He's got talent, right? So I'd want to get that guy out there. That would be my hope. We'll see what Sean Desai thinks.
All right, John, just one note on your boy, Jordan Davis. You know who's making him look bad, maybe worse than anyone else in the National Football League? His teammate, who is capable of actually putting up the stats. He actually gets the thing. He takes 2 blockers and still gets to the quarterback or makes the tackle. That's the guy who's making, and I think Jordan Davis playing great, but the guy's making him look bad.
Well, I said
right next to him.
Look, I said from day one when he got drafted, it might be too esoteric for the fan base because it's not going to be. And Jalen Carter's like bang in your face. Yeah, he's the Aaron Donald type defensive tackle. If this were a 4-man front, he'd be the under tackle. He'd be the 3 technique, and Jordan would be the nose tackle, the shade. If you go the old Jim Schwartz, and one guy's responsible for doing the dirty work, and the other guy's responsible for, showing up in the box score. And that's, everybody's got their role. And
Absolutely.
Jordan does his role very, very well this season.
All right, Tommy, want to run this one by? I give credit to our buddy Brendan Lee Gouton, who put these stats out yesterday. Trips into the red zone. We talked earlier about that's been one of the few spots that the Eagles at 5-0 have actually been worse this year than they were last year. 11 trips into the red zone where DeAndre Swift has been the guy in the backfield for the Eagles. Eagles have scored 6 touchdowns and settled for 5 field goals. When Kenny Gainwell has been the guy in the backfield for those red zone trips, the Eagles in 8 tries have one touchdown, 4 field goals, turned it over on downs once, and ran out the clock twice. So Kenny Gainwell, when he's been in the red zone as the number 1 back, is 1 of 8 scoring touchdowns. DeAndre Swift is 6 of 11 scoring touchdowns. That's a pretty big disparity. John told me all year at training camp leading up to, they trust Kenny Gainwell. He's going to be the high leverage back. He's going to be the guy in the big spot. He has been, and he has not been producing. When Swift had been given a chance, Gainwell out of the lineup, came up big. Did they give it up this week and just leave DeAndre Swift in there when they get inside the red zone to try and fix some of those issues?
It sounds like they sure should. Or mix in Boston Scott, do something. But Gainwell has worked well in that role in the past, and who knows why it's not working. Again, maybe with defense is really adjusting to what to focus on Jalen Hurts. That has taken away some of Gainwell's effectiveness for some reason. I don't know. But the bottom line is the stats don't lie, and he's obviously not getting the job done. So the Eagles ought to do something because they need to listen. Touchdowns versus field goals just makes all the difference in the world. The Eagles dominated that game in Los Angeles, and yet with 4.5 minutes left, it was a 6-point game. If they just have 1 touchdown instead of a field goal, then that's a 2-possession game in the third quarter, and the Eagles can breathe a little bit. And that makes a huge difference. That puts more pressure on the Rams. Maybe all of a sudden you see Stafford taking chances and throwing balls up that the Eagles can attack. So scoring touchdowns is critical, and the Eagles have got to do a better job of that, whether it's personnel, coaching, execution, something. But I hadn't seen that, so that's interesting. That's interesting.
I'll leave it here with you, Tommy. At Lawlor NFL, make sure you follow Tommy on X, Twitter, eaglesblitz.com. I'm going to leave you with a conspiracy theory. Why not? Love a good conspiracy theory. I told Jason Kelce was pretty fired up at one point due to the red zone difficulties, even putting his hands on Jeff Stoutland a little bit. And I told Jody yesterday, he talked after the game, but he didn't want to get into it. I said he wanted to create content for New Heights, his podcast. And sure enough, he talked about it. And it was the red zone issues, the communication issues. But the larger point, I joke about the conspiracy theory. The larger point is we've seen it with A.J. Brown. We've seen it now with Jason Kelsey. To a little bit in the past with somebody like Dallas Goedert, Darius Slay. Is it a good thing that they're so emotional? That the head coach is emotional, or is it a bad thing?
There's not a blanket answer for that, right? You want your team and your coaches to be genuine. So if they're emotional people and they're emotional on the sidelines, that's okay. It just can't be fake emotion. If you remember years ago when Marty Morningweg was the coach in Detroit, he got mad one day in practice and went and got on his motorcycle and drove off to show his anger at his team. It was completely staged because why would his motorcycle be by the end zone during a football practice? So the team just looked at him and said, "Oh, dude, you got to be kidding me with that stunt." So he was an awful head coach. I just happened the other day to watch a clips of back in 1994. The Eagles played San Francisco, 140-8. Steve Young got benched in that game and was furious at George Seifert for benching him and screamed at him just the most ungodly things, trying to get George Seifert to fight him. And George ignored him the whole time. And Steve Young's teammates all of a sudden kind of saw him in a different light because he'd always been kind of not a super emotional guy. And he said him being emotional, his teammates kind of got fired up by that. And as you know, they went on to win the Super Bowl that year. So emotion can be a good thing if it's genuine and it's under control. And the Eagles seem to be able to, Sirianni talks about being from an Italian family. You can yell at each other and still love each other, and that's okay. It seems to be okay. Now, listen, we're talking about athletes, and these guys have egos the size of Montana. So you don't know if somebody's going to get a little out of hand with that. Something's going to go wrong. So it is something to watch. That's for sure.
All right. Last thing for you, Tommy. We'll just have some fun with this. I'm not really putting you to the test, but I am. Nick Sirianni, with his win last week, improved to the 4th best coaching record in the history of the National Football League with 2 years of March. He's number 4 in the history of the National Football League as far as winning percentages go, over 700. Who are the 3 guys ahead of him?
So one of them's got to be John Madden.
That would be correct. Very good. Number 2.
George Allen.
He's ahead of George Allen, Sirianni.
Oh, he is? Okay.
Yeah.
Bill Walsh.
Not Walsh.
Not Walsh.
Nope.
Wow. I know Madden had a short career. Oh, Tony Dungy?
Mm-mm.
No. Wow. I don't know who are the other 2.
One is Lombardi.
Is Lombardi, yeah, because most people consider him the greatest.
Yeah.
George Hallis?
No. A guy I never heard of before today. I looked him up and saw Guy Chamberlain. From the 20s, the 1920s, somewhere, believe it or not.
Pottsville Maroons.
He played one season for the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets before he became a coach.
Okay.
Hey, let me ask you, do you have the numbers there, Jody? Who's got the highest winning percentage?
Guy Chamberlain at 760 something.
Now think about this, guys. Why I wanted to hear the number. After the 2-5 start, Nick Sirianni is 26-6. That is 8-13.
Yeah, that would can't go back and wipe those out, but you're right. Since then, he's been that good. Chamberlain won, Madden 759, Lombardi 738. Right now, Sirianni's at 718. 4th best coaching record in the history of the National Football League. And we don't talk about it. We really should. He's doing a hell of a job.
I'm glad you said that because I don't think a lot of Eagles fans understand what this run is. It is unbelievable.
Right.
Yeah.
Hurts is what, 22-1 in his last 22
and 1.
starts?
22-1.
That's freaky.
And they'll see if they can add a little percentage on each this weekend against the Jets. Tommy, great stuff. Always a pleasure when you come on.
Thanks, Tommy.
We love having you. We will certainly be calling you back again in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it was great talking to you, fellas.
Our pleasure.
Appreciate
Check
it.
out his website, Eagles, IGGLES, eaglesblitz.com. Tommy makes a couple of very good Eagle posts each and every single week. All right, McMahon and McDonald posting them for you every day here on Birds 365. We'll come back. I'll give you another pretty good stat. I'm stealing stats all over the place. BLG put up a good one yesterday. Ruben Frank put up a good one today. He's fourth. Nick Sirianni is got.
I'm more focused on that 8-13 since the Flower speech.
Yeah, see that I can't do that. You do that. I don't think you can. Other than taking away, I was when he started.
Well, no, because I'm not taking away from those guys. I'm trying to point out, as I said to Tommy, I do not think people understand the run they're on. Well, not everybody. Many people do, but a lot of people do not. This shit doesn't happen in this league. It doesn't happen in this league. And that's why I bring it up. 2-5, they got off to a terrible start.
Even adding 2-5, acknowledging it was a 2-5 start, and he's still the fourth best coach in the history of the National Football League to this point. Pretty damn impressive. He's McMahon. I'm McDonald. We'll come back with more Birds 365. Stay right there.